from Global Calgary, News Final continues. Here is Jamie Dawn.
He was looking to find love and had allegedly met a girl online, but a date between an Edmonton man and a mystery woman last month ended in his death. Now police say this missing persons case is a homicide and today laid charges of first-degree murder. Carolyn Jarvis has the story.
Mark Twitchell was born on July 4th, 1979 in Edmonton, Alberta. Not much is known about his childhood or family, but from a young age, Mark had an interest in films and TV, especially movies and TV shows like Star Wars and Dexter. Following his deep-rooted interest in film and TV, in the late 1990s, Twitchell would graduate from the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology for Television and Radio, and not long after would meet his wife, Megan Castarella, on an online dating site called plentyoffish.com. Despite meeting on an online forum and living in 2 different countries, Megan Castarella and Mark Twitchell started talking regularly, and in the following years, Twitchell had even decided to move to America to be closer to her. But as time went on in their relationship, problems began to rise, and Megan would quickly notice that Twitchell was a compulsive liar. He would lie about small things, like household bills, but then eventually would move on to lying about more serious things, like being unfaithful. In 2004, Megan and Twitchell would divorce, prompting Twitchell to return back to Alberta to resume pursuing his passion for filmmaking. It was during this time that Twitchell's obsession with the Star Wars franchise boomed, and with the prequel trilogy coming to an end in 2005, Twitchell decided to make a feature-length fan film with the help of local artists as actors, detailed costumes, and even a cameo from Jeremy Bulloch, the actor who played Boba Fett in the original movies. This semi-large production of a fan film generated quite a bit of online attention for Twitchell, with forums being created discussing the movie. During this time, Twitchell had returned to plentyoffish.com, the website where he had met his first wife, in search of another potential relationship. Eventually, Twitchell met another woman named Jess and moved into a small corner lot in St. Albert, where they had their first and only daughter. By this time, Twitchell's fan film had gone into post-production, and he'd moved on to other creative projects, most notably a comedy named Day Players.
You gotta stretch. We're gonna be sitting here for hours.
How much wood could a woodchuck chuck?
If a woodchuck could chuck wood?
Dang it, I can't
beat you again! You good?
Feel
good?
Great. What's our backstory for the scene?
We're hungry and we're eating.
I like it.
Okay,
I like it.
that's good.
After directing 2 feature-length films, Twitchell moved on to the genre of horror. Most notably, in 2008, Twitchell started working on a short horror film called House of Cards. The premise of the movie was about a serial killer who uses various tactics to lure his victims from the internet to kill them. He had rented a garage in southeast Edmonton as a makeshift studio to film the movie, and had even given all of his neighbors letters that said that if they hear any screams, it was all part of the movie, an interesting detail that would be important later on. At the time, Twitchell was by no means a famous director, but was quickly gaining local and online recognition for his projects. But in the following months, Twitchell's career as well as his future would come crumbling down. In the months leading up to October 2008, Twitchell had downloaded an IP blocker and had created a fake dating profile on plentyoffish.com. He'd posed as a blonde woman named Sheena, looking for a partner, and eventually he'd attracted his first victim. Recently divorced 33-year-old Gilles Tetreault had started chatting with Sheena online, and after a few weeks, Tetreault had agreed to meet the woman in person at her house in Edmonton. Sheena had even sent Tetreault instructions on how to get to her house and what to do once he'd arrived. Before Gilles would come to his garage, Twitchell would set up what he called his, quote, kill room. This room contained plastic sheets taped around his table, a green curtain where he would hide until his victims had walked in, and an assortment of weapons he would use to either kill his victim or make them fall unconscious. Among them were metal pipes, stun guns, and prop guns from his movie shoots. So on October 3rd, 2008, without telling anyone where he was going and closely following the directions that Sheena had given him, Gilles Tetreault drove to what he believed would be Sheena's house in southeast Edmonton. However, upon arriving and walking into the half-opened garage at the location, he was attacked multiple times with a stun gun and threatened with a fake plastic gun as a struggle ensued. At the time, Tetreault couldn't see who his attacker was, as the man was wearing a hockey mask. At this point, Tetreault was lying on the ground, blindfolded with duct tape, but in a last-ditch effort to try and escape the garage he was trapped in, Tetreault swung at his attacker before dropping to the floor and crawling under the half-opened garage door. Once Tetreault was outside, the effect of the stun gun started to set in, meaning he could barely use his legs, and after a few minutes of crawling away from the garage, Tetreault stumbled across a couple going out for a walk. The couple, thinking that this was a scamming technique, didn't help Tetreault, but by this time, Twitchell had given up, and Tetreault managed to get back into his car and return home. Twitchell would write about this event and what he thought he should have done differently in a recovered file found on his computer in the following weeks. This detail will be more important later on. Nevertheless, after the attack, neither Tetreault nor the couple who'd seen him had called the police, which allowed Mark Twitchell to hone his plan for his next attack. After completely failing his first attempt at murder, Twitchell refined his work ethic. This time, he would use a fake profile under the pseudonym Jen, using random photos of women online. Twitchell would later confess that he would steal photos of women online on the same website that he was using to catfish. Nevertheless, Twitchell quickly made his dating profile, and after changing his settings to look for a, quote, intimate encounter, the fake profile started getting an abundance of replies. From them, Twitchell would pick a 38-year-old man named Johnny Altinger as his victim. After flirting with him over messages and giving directions to his house, Twitchell waited for Altinger to arrive, setting up his kill room in the process, as he did for his last victim. But before Altinger left his house, he'd sent a text to his friends explaining where he was going and what he'd be doing. This detail will be important later on. Nevertheless, to Twitchell's surprise, Altinger had arrived 15 minutes earlier than expected and started walking up to the garage where Twitchell was standing in plain view. In order to not bring suspicion to himself, Twitchell had decided to pretend like he was using the garage as his workshop, and that the girl who Altinger had met online would arrive in around 20 minutes. 20 minutes passed, and Twitchell messed up again. He would later say that he, quote, chickened out at the last second. When Altinger had arrived for a second time, Twitchell told him that his date was stuck in traffic and couldn't come. Defeated, Altinger had no choice but to leave, and he did. But as he was driving home, he sent one more message to a supposed date. It's unknown exactly what this text had said, but Twitchell would later recount that he convinced Altinger to come back. And he did, under the false pretense that Jen, his date, would be waiting for him at the location. So, a few tens of minutes later, Altinger arrived for a third time at the garage, walking through the door before Twitchell grabbed his metal pipe and swung it at Altinger's head, before grabbing his knife and stabbing him, first in the gut and then the throat, ultimately letting Altinger bleed out on the ground. After making sure Altinger was dead, Twitchell used what he called his game processing kit, with tools like a butcher's knife, a fillet knife, and a skinner to dismember and dispose of the body. He had used 2 bottles of pure ammonia to wipe away any bloodstains on the walls or floor. He would later confess that he used pure ammonia because, quote, even if the stain won't completely wipe away, it destroys the sample so that no DNA can be processed. But there was still one piece of evidence that Twitchell couldn't quickly destroy: the car that Altinger had arrived with. In the following weeks, Twitchell would make up an elaborate yet terrible alibi on how he obtained Altinger's car. Twitchell would tell the police that Altinger had come up to him on the street and told him that he'd met a woman named Jen who he was going to move to Costa Rica with, and needed to get rid of his car. He'd say that Altinger sold his car for however much money was in Twitchell's pocket at the time, which was around $40, and that's how he obtained the car. Despite being a very weak alibi that would later be scrutinized in court, Twitchell fully committed to the story. So much so that he even broke into Altinger's 1-bedroom condo and changed his auto-response to emails to say that he had gone on a 2-month vacation to Costa Rica. This email that Twitchell had sent to Altinger's friends seemed to be very out of character for Altinger, and it had sparked suspicion on whether Altinger was telling the truth, or whether this was Altinger at all. As a result, a few of Altinger's close friends broke into his condo to investigate his claim, only to find that his passport and clothes were still there, all items that would have been necessary if Altinger was traveling to Costa Rica. This string of unlikely events sparked an official homicide investigation into the disappearance of Johnny Altinger. Because Altinger had told his friends where he'd be the night of his murder, police started questioning people around the area, and among them was Mark Twitchell. On October 19th, 2003, 9 days after Twitchell had murdered Altinger, he's called in for questioning at 2 a.m. at the Southwest Division of the Edmonton Police Service by Detective Mike Tabler. At this point in time, Mark Twitchell is not a prime suspect. The only reason he's been called in for questioning is because he's renting the garage where Altinger might have disappeared. And as you'll see, the main focus of this interrogation will be about the garage and what he's been doing there.
I'm here to talk to you tonight because of the fact that you happen to be the renter of a garage that has come to our attention due to a missing person. Okay? Now, first of all, can you please state your name for me?
Mark Twitchell.
And it's Twitchell?
Correct.
Okay. Your date of birth, sir? Okay. Now, the garage in question that we're talking about tonight, can you tell me the address of that place?
5712 40th Avenue.
5712 40th Avenue. And when did you rent that garage?
I began renting it on September 1st.
Okay. And you rented it September 1st? And who'd you rent it from?
A company called Kirkside Real Estate.
Kirkside?
Kirkside, all one word, yeah.
Okay. And you got the only key to, or was it one or two
There's
keys?
2 keys.
Okay. So you got 2 keys. Okay. And where are those keys now?
You guys have the one that I had.
Okay.
And the other one, the last I heard of was with one of my production assistants, Mike Young.
Now, the house is rented by people separate from you.
Right.
Who have no access to the garage.
Correct.
Okay? And the windows are all blocked and the doors are metal and nobody can see in there.
Right.
And it's nobody's business what goes on in there, that's your...
We block out the lights so that during the day when we're filming and we're trying to create a nighttime atmosphere, that the sunlight doesn't get in our way.
Of course, yeah. Things you have to do with production.
Yeah. We try to control the light as much as possible.
Okay. So you rented this on the 1st of September. So you, what type of film is it, or that you're shooting at this particular time? That you're talking about shooting at this, what sort of a film is it?
It's a suspense thriller. Actually, it's a short film. The total runtime is only going to be about 8 or 9 minutes.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Suspense thriller?
Right.
Okay, and what would you do with a film like this once you've filmed 8 or 9 minutes?
Go through the editing process. I try to organize it so that it didn't have a lot of effects work to do, so it wouldn't take forever in post-production.
Neat. Now, so getting back here, the only person that would have had access is Mike Young or yourself to that place.
Yeah.
Now, tonight you were asked to go down there and meet our constables at
Yes.
the garage, and that's because they were looking for a missing person.
Yeah.
Okay. And you were contacted, you were apparently at home in St. Albert, which is quite a distance from this, and yet you readily responded down to help the police, and we certainly appreciate that. Now, you arrived at the garage and you noted something immediately on your arrival when you went up to the door to show the police the garage.
Yeah.
And what was that?
Well, the first thing that happened, I drove in, I parked in the back where I usually parked. The constable was calling me when I was about a minute out to get there.
Yeah.
And talked to him and said, yeah, so like, where are you? And he was in the back, so I went to meet him and, well, 1 second, I'm not my wife. She's, I've been keeping her.
It would later be revealed that Twitchell was cheating on his wife with an ex-girlfriend he'd met in university.
Oh.
Yeah, that's her. I'll let her leave a voicemail. She's going to be up anyway, so. Anyway, yeah, so I get into the back and I'm like, okay, well, let's go check it out. So I get to the actual gate, side gate there, and they mentioned that it had been blocked off somehow. I didn't know what that was about. I opened it, there was nothing there, so they said, okay, well, I guess it's not. It was a little odd, but went down the side of the garage, came back around, looked at the door itself, and the first thing that I noticed upon looking a little closer at it, because the light wasn't that great, but I could see what was going on, the padlock didn't look familiar to me.
Okay.
And I was the one that actually put the latch on the door, and I had a padlock previously, but it wasn't the same one. The one that I had was like the silver on the outside, like a black plastic dial in the center, and this one was just all metal.
Yeah.
So
you noticed a different padlock
yeah,
and that on the door.
right.
Now, what other locks are there on that door? Can you describe?
There's also a deadbolt.
A deadbolt?
Yeah,
And
pretty standard lock.
Yeah. And is there another type of lock or handle or?
No, just the doorknob, but I don't think the doorknob locks. I've never tried it, but I don't think it does.
Okay. So regular doorknob, deadbolt, and then a padlock. Okay, and the padlock.
Yeah.
It's interesting how that all comes together.
Can't get me started on this stuff. I can go for hours.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Now, so back again, so we're talking about back at the garage,
Yeah.
and you're saying that the 10th was the last time that you were at the garage.
Yeah.
And you can say that absolutely for sure.
No, it was either a couple of days before or a couple of days after that I dropped off some cleaning stuff. It was like a Tuesday, Wednesday, something like that.
Tuesday or Wednesday, you
Yeah.
dropped off some cleaning stuff.
Yeah. So it's like a stop off, drop it off, and then go.
Now, what sort of cleaning supplies would you have at that place then?
Paper towels, like stain cleaner, gloves, the usual stuff. Just because we deal with this, when you do anything that's involving like suspense thrillers or anything like that, and you want to have something that looks like blood on screen, we use this mix that's like a corn syrup with food coloring in it, because it looks really good on camera, it has the right consistency and everything, but it's sticky as hell. Gets everywhere, and it's a nightmare. And last time, it got all over the chair, it got all over the floor. It's like ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, and that was really my thing, was just because then everybody's grabbing stuff and moving it over, and every time they do, they rub up against it and get it all over their clothes, and it's sticky and annoying. So, it's just a matter of keeping that stuff off of there and clean. And the achieved shot was running a sword through a guy who was sitting in a chair.
Yeah.
And so the way we did it is we just had like the actor sitting in the chair, and then the other actor pretending to hold the sword
Yeah.
in him, and then we go back, lock the camera off, it hasn't moved, shoot this, or we take the same color shirt that the guy in the chair was wearing, put like a Ziploc bag full of this corn syrup there, and then just, you know, boom, put the blade through it so that it comes out with the corn syrup.
Yeah. Now, so you were doing quite a bit of that sort of stuff in the garage,
Yeah.
that kind of shooting, where there was like blood effect and that. So what other supplies would you? Now it's me. I'm just thinking about this. I mean, it's kind of odd that you're filming that kind of thing, and we end up drawn to that garage because of a missing person
Yeah.
who supposedly went there.
That's really freaky too, and as soon as they called me on the phone, as soon as Maxwell called me and said that, you know, this is what's going on, I get this weird chill, because it just doesn't sit right. So the first thing I start asking myself is who all knows about what we do there and what our schedule is like and stuff like that. And if we have a shooting schedule, usually there's a bunch of people in and out of there to prep leading up to it, and then we shoot something there, and then that's it. Until we announce something else, there's no fixed activity. So, I don't know.
So who would have access to it to get things set up?
It'd be me and anybody else that had a key. So basically, for this instance, it was me, Mike, and Jay.
And where would you have got these cleaning materials? Like, these sound like something kind of special. Where would you get that?
Well, it's like Home Depot or James
Home
or
Depot.
something like that, yeah.
Well,
We either
this is regular cleaning shit?
Yeah. We don't need
Okay.
anything that crazy. It's not like
Well, okay, well, I don't know, you're describing this stuff.
Yeah, no, it's just like, usual stuff. We don't have anything special. The garage is a dirty place anyway. We have no intention of putting anything cool in there or anything like that.
Yeah.
So, you know, just whatever will get the sticky stuff off or that kind of thing. And
Okay.
that's basically it. Something that, if it's not gonna sit there and smell up the place,
Yeah.
be better.
So, now, you've been told that we're looking for a missing man.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, have you been told his name?
No.
Okay. The name is John
Okay.
Altinger. Altinger.
Okay.
Does that name ring a bell to you or mean anything to you?
No.
Never heard it before?
No.
He's nobody that you'd been using as an actor or that maybe Mike or Jason would have been in touch with?
No, I don't think so. I don't know if Mike or Jay know him, but nothing that in terms of casting or production crew or anything like that.
No?
No.
Not a worker, not an employee you've heard about?
No.
No. Now, do you have any girls that are employed by you or that take part in anything? Any of the setup or
Often.
anything?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had a really great actress on this one that we worked with. She came to the condo set on the Friday. Came up from Red Deer. Her name's Katrina.
Katrina?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and...
And that's the most recent.
Okay.
I got some Facebook buddies too that are all kind of in the industry and back and forth, and submitting themselves for casting calls and things like that. But
Yeah.
nobody that's crew.
Yeah.
Out of context, asking if there are women in Twitchell's cast and crew might seem like a strange thing to ask, but in the following minutes, he'll use this to introduce the disappearance of John Altinger.
Yeah.
So, these Facebook buddies, would they have connected with anybody like this maybe that was just a single guy that maybe attracted him towards this sort of line of work or anything like that?
Maybe, I don't know. Not that I'm aware of, but possibly. I don't.
Okay. Okay, the indications we have, and we've got this through our investigations, and the address comes up, and the garage is described, and he actually says that he was there on that particular day. The particular day we're talking about is I think the 15th.
15th, okay.
Now, and I may be mistaken, I may be mixing a couple of things up, but I think the 15th. And that's the day you're indicating that you were probably down there putting supplies there.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Like on Wednesday or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was in and around the same sort of time frame that you were there. You know, that he would have been there.
Okay,
Like in the afternoon.
really?
Yeah. And he was supposed to go there and meet a girl who described the address and told him how to get there. Now this is girl he's met through, an internet site.
Okay.
Doesn't know her from before. So he, of course, lets friends know where he's going.
Right.
But go to meet a girl, swear him over. Sends it out to a few friends. All of a sudden, he disappears. Last known place was there. Said he went there. Met a guy. The girl wasn't there. Met a guy in the garage.
In the garage?
Apparently.
Okay.
Can you tell me? What does it explain to you? Tell me what you're thinking.
Well, it explains the foreign padlock. If he switched it out or something like that, that makes sense.
Who switched it?
Whoever this guy is.
Well, he didn't switch anything. He went there and met somebody there. Yeah.
Okay, but that's what I mean. Like, whoever he met there,
Yeah.
because I don't know of anybody else that has access unless they, you know, accessed it themselves, pretty
Yeah.
much.
So your lock was totally gone off there,
Yeah.
okay? The latch was still there, but a different padlock's there. So anybody could have come along with a set of bolt cutters, cut yours off, put their own on, right? That still doesn't give them access to the garage because there's still a deadbolt, right?
Yeah.
This guy indicates to his friends that he arrived, met a guy in there, the girl wasn't there, got a call from her later,
Okay.
was going back to the garage.
Huh.
And that's where the trail goes cold on us.
So, okay, let me get this straight.
Yeah.
The guy who's missing
Yeah,
shows up to my garage,
right. 5712 40th Ave. Yeah.
claims to have been in it,
Yeah, and talk to a guy.
talked to another guy.
Yeah.
So now there's two of them. And then he leaves.
Because the girl's not there, that he's supposedly.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. And then he talks to her on the phone.
I don't know that he talks to her on the phone or if he gets a message from her or which way that one went.
Okay.
Okay.
He somehow ends up communicating with her, and then comes
Goes back to the garage to meet her.
Okay. All right.
Now, does that sound like anything that you know about?
Not at all.
Does it sound like anything that could be related in any way to any movie sort of stuff you're doing, or?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, I'm the producer. I pretty much control all the elements.
Yeah.
So if there was anything like that, if somebody needs to borrow the place or whatever, then they would let me know.
They'd let you know.
They'd ask or something like that. So yeah, no, I don't know anything about that.
No. Does the name Jen mean anything to you?
No, Constable Maxwell asked me about that too, and
Yes,
I don't
yeah.
know Jen or anything like that.
So the name Jen doesn't mean anything to you. You don't know a Jen. You don't have an actress named Jen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What's your wife's name?
Jess.
Jess. Not Jen.
No.
Okay. Is your wife involved in anything with the garage at all, or does she even know it exists, or?
Yeah, she knows it exists. She tries to stay out of the film stuff as much as possible.
So once again, John Altinger is not a name you've known. Nobody like that's tried to rent the place from you. Nobody by the name of Jen means anything to you.
No.
No relatives named Jen.
Oh, maybe. I took it on the list. but
Okay. All right.
My mom's
Fair
worth 12. So, you know, let me get back to you on that one. It's a checker for sure, but.
Yeah.
No, that's, and I'm trying to think like if they don't really have any like, you know,
Yeah.
regular,
Okay. What about? Now, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about the business. Now, you told me about some projects you're shooting on, and I want to ask you if you're doing any other kind of shooting there. Like, is there any? And I mean, I'm just wondering because it brings into play different sort of characters. Are you shooting any porn there or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
I've actually been teased about that a lot.
Yeah.
And I tease back by saying that, oh, I should have gotten into porn because it's guaranteed money in the bank.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's really not the environment for that. For one thing, it's not even heated.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
no. It's
Yeah,
just,
it would be a little cool.
And then, again, if a filmmaker gets into that side of the industry, the other side will never take you seriously.
Okay.
So, unless I want to go making like 100 aliases, call myself Dick Hard or some stupid porn name or whatever. So that's always been the ultimate goal for me, but yeah, no porn or anything like that.
Okay. So, have you ever heard of these online dating site kind of things? What are some of the ones you've heard of?
Oh man, I don't know, Match.com, I've heard of the Plenty of Fish one.
Okay, Plenty of Fish.
Yeah, there's, what else is there? I don't know, there's a bunch of them, there's like hundreds of them.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. You don't frequent them?
No.
Okay.
I did some research on them for a freelance article that I wrote, that was like about a month ago.
About a month ago?
Maybe more. It's a little over a month ago. This is a freelance project that I got. I'm on this website called ifreelance.com. So you get like, you know, basically writing gigs and stuff like that. And this guy said, you know what, we needed an article for online dating and stuff like that, and the rules and the etiquette and whatnot. I said, oh, okay, I'll just...
Mark Twitchell never wrote an article about online dating. The only reason he's telling the interrogator this is because a few months prior, he'd been caught surfing an online dating site by his wife and had to come up with a lie to prevent a divorce. To make the lie believable, he doubled down on proof, fabricating emails, voicemails, and even hiring an actor to play as his boss so that his wife wouldn't suspect anything.
Checked out some of that stuff in order to write the article and put it together and did it and got paid for it and everything like that. So, yeah, but...
So what did you end up doing with that? So you pretend you're somebody and do the online dating sort of thing and land it all up?
You go there, but you tell everybody what's going on, right? Like I, you know, would say it's a social experiment for the purpose of figuring out what your guys' view and opinion of it is and that kind of thing. And it's a lot easier just to touch base with the people who use the site and get their overall opinion from it.
Yeah.
So they would say, well, you know, I get different opinions too. And the guys say things like, well, you know, it's really tough because there's lots of competition. The girls come back with the feedback of, well, everybody on here is a pig, you know, and that kind of thing. And so I kind of, you know, break that down, try to get a little more creative with it and make it something that someone would actually feel like reading.
Okay. All right. Now, like I said, I'm going to talk to my people and see if I'm missing anything and run over stuff.
A few hours after this interrogation, realizing that police could find Altinger's car in his possession, Twitchell sent this email to Mike Tabler, the man who interrogated him. In the email, Twitchell explains that he was so tired during the interrogation that he missed a few things, saying, quote, "Listen, last night when we were talking, I was running on fumes and very tired, so I missed a couple things that came to mind this afternoon that may or may not be important in this case." And then explains this story that Altinger had given him his red Mazda 3 for $40 at a gas station. The detective, obviously skeptical of this alibi, called Twitchell back the next day for another interrogation. And in this one, unlike the last one, you'll see a much different attitude from Twitchell. So, on October 20th, Twitchell is called back to the Edmonton Police Services headquarters to be interrogated by Detective Bill Clark, the new head of the investigation. A few hours into the interrogation, Twitchell starts explaining his alibi to the detective, at which point the detective gets up and leaves the room.
He asked me, you know, hey buddy, do you want to buy a car? And I said, well, you know, I'm in a car. Like, what do you mean? And he goes, well, I have shacked up with this really rich lady. You know, it's like a sugar mama kind of situation, and she's gonna take care of me, and she's gonna buy me a new car when we get back from a vacation that we're gonna take. Well, what's going on? Do you know? Or
yeah, that's what I'm gonna find out right now. About contacting the lawyer, that still holds true. Okay, just so you're aware.
okay.
If at any time we're talking, you want to contact the lawyer, you can do so at any time. I'll take you to a phone. There's something else I want to tell you, Mark.
Detective Bill Clark is about to start a major confrontation that will last the rest of the interrogation in one blunt statement. When he says this, you'll notice a very gradual but clear shift in Twitchell's behavior.
And that's that there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that you're involved in the disappearance of John Altinger. No doubt in my mind at all, Mark.
Why?
As I said, Mark, there's no doubt in my mind that you're involved in this disappearance. I just want to get to the bottom of this, because this is not going to go away. It's not going to leave you, Mark.
I don't understand.
I'm going to explain some of the reasons to you. But you do understand, because you know what I'm talking about. You're involved in this, and unfortunately, something got carried away. Something got carried away with this guy. I mean, talking to you here tonight, you seem like a decent guy. And I think that something happened that night that maybe you just didn't have total control of. And I'm here to get to the bottom of it. Because it's not going to go away. This is going to stay with you. And we need to clear this up here and now. We need to clear this up tonight. You need to tell me the truth about what's going on. What happened with this fella? Something that went too far?
I have no idea what the hell is going on.
You do have an idea. You have a very good idea, Mark, about what's going on. You know exactly what happened there that night. I mean, you haven't told us the truth. Because that what you've been telling me hasn't been the truth. Has it, Mark?
If you haven't noticed already, Twitchell went from talking about himself and his alibi for hours at a time to not being able to answer a simple question. You'll notice for the rest of the interview, Twitchell barely tries to defend himself, and when he does, it's in short, ominous 2 or 3 word sentences.
This can't be. I don't...
What do you mean it can't be?
I just don't understand.
Well, what don't you understand? We have a fellow who's missing. We know he's been to your garage. We've talked to all the neighbors now. You know, the neighbors saw you changing the lock about a week and a half ago. Neighbors watch. They see all these things. Little things that you don't realize. Okay? We know the lock was changed long before the 15th. Yet when you get there on the 15th, you tell me, oh, that's your lock on there on the 15th. It's not till you go back with the policeman last night that you notice, or you say. So that's a lie. That's a lie you told me. When you gave your version of events to Detective Tabler last night, your version of events was different than what you told me today. What you wrote down was different than what you told me in this room. And you know that. You're not a dumb guy. You know it's not going to go away. This is going to keep on eating at you and eating at
I
you.
just feel like I'm in the fucking Twilight Zone right now.
And why do you feel you're in the Twilight Zone? We need to get to the truth about what happened with John Altinger. Specifically, do you remember talking to the constable last night? Specifically, you talked to the constable last night. He specifically asked you 3 or 4 times, do you remember seeing a red car any time around your garage? Anything? No, officer, I don't remember anything about a red car. Yet
I
now,
remember those questions.
and you never mention that to Detective Tabler.
According to all available footage from the first interrogation with Detective Mike Tabler, Twitchell was never asked about a red car. But in this interrogation, after being told that he had, he doesn't try to object or deny, and barely says a full sentence before going back to silence.
Not once do you mention a red car, or buying a car off an individual you didn't know for $40, while he's asking about the disappearance of a guy who's seen it at your garage. And it's obvious why you didn't mention it, because you had something to do with his disappearance. I mean, you have a barrel in your garage. A barrel you say you buy for garbage. Everyone knows in the movie industry those are known as burn barrels. We got that off your own friends. They're the ones telling us this. Your co-workers. What happened to John, Mark? What'd you do with him?
Wrong tree.
Wrong dream?
No, tree.
Wrong tree.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that, Mark?
I'm done.
What do you mean you're done?
I mean, I'm not talking anymore. This is ridiculous.
Well, what is your explanation? You haven't answered any of the questions. If you didn't do anything wrong, why wouldn't you answer those questions? Like, I look at you, I see you sitting here, I've talked to you for several hours now, and I just can't figure out the why.
At this point in time, Twitchell can legally leave whenever he wants to, and so the interrogator puts pressure on him, making it as hard as possible for him to leave, using phrases like, "You'll never be able to live with yourself, this doesn't go away," and bringing up his wife and daughter.
What drove you to this? Is there something going on? Obviously there's something going on behind the scenes that I don't know about. Yeah, you're involved over your head in this.
Is anything that you're saying genuine, or is this some sort of tactic?
You got to get away from the acting part, Mark, and listen to what I'm saying. You have told me nothing but lies. An innocent man does not come in here and tell lies. That's genuine, Mark. Everything I'm telling you in here is genuine. So get out of your film producer mode and the facade of thinking that everyone's an actor. Because this is real life.
Am I being charged?
Not yet.
Am I free to go?
Yep.
Then I will.
Okay. We're seizing your car, so you won't be getting it back. We'll be getting a search warrant to go through the car, forensic examination. Okay? As soon as we're done interviewing everybody else, you will, we'll be coming back to charge you. It's just a matter of time. Mark, that you can live with this the rest of your life? Doesn't bother you at all?
What does that mean?
Well, you're involved in this disappearance of this guy.
But we'll live with it. What do you mean?
Well, what you did to him. You can live with that? That's what I mean. You can live with that, what's happened to him? I mean, only you know what's happened to him. I'll find that out eventually. It's going to take me a little time. I just got involved in this case today. But it's so obvious you're involved, Mark. It's like you're not a very good actor. And you're in the business.
Never said I was an actor.
Producer. You've seen actors. You're not good at it at all. For it. Why is it, Mark? You don't have an explanation.
Fear.
Pardon me? I didn't hear you. I mean, I know it's tough. I mean, I don't know much about your life, but I'm not trying to be the bad guy here, Mark.
Can't help but feel like that's a tactic. I just feel like everything is a tactic right now.
Why do you think that? When you know what I've told you in this room is the truth, so how do you say that the tactic?
Just, you know, we're not seeing a movie, but it's a top thing.
This is real life stuff. You gotta get away from the movies.
Yeah, I know.
That's the problem here. All I'm here for is get the truth. That's my job. There's two sides to every story. You're not going to be able to live with yourself with this for the rest of your life.
You'd be surprised what I can live with.
It's going to eat at you and eat at you. It's going to affect your family because it's affecting you. How would you describe your marriage? Is it good?
Everything was going fantastic.
You know, I had a family, a relative of mine was murdered back in 1997, White Horse, Yukon. My wife's sister was murdered by her husband. Family thing. Not like this.
Are you serious?
Serious. It was actually made national news. It was a big thing about the defense of provocation. The guy's name was Ralph Klassen. That was my brother-in-law at the time. And he strangled her. He strangled his wife, which is my wife's sister, in bed. They were separated. He'd come home and thought she was fooling around, and he was out to lunch. There was no fooling around going on. None at all. And he strangled her with his hands. So hard that he actually sprained his two thumbs. And what happened was he leaves a note in the house saying that he couldn't live with himself and he was going to end his own life. So I don't know if you've ever been to White Horse, but he drove up. I wasn't up there myself. My wife went up for the trial with her sisters, but he drives up on a hill in his little Datsun B210 truck. And his plan was, they found out this later from talking to him, that's how we know, but his plan was to drive head on into one of the iron ore trucks that work at the mines up there. So he waited and waited, he said. This is what he's telling the Mounties later. And no iron ore truck came along, so a propane tanker was coming down the highway. So he drives down the hill, he smashes head on a propane tanker, and just before he hits it, he ducks. And if you can believe it, he ends up with a broken toe. That was his whole injuries from this accident. The truck driver ends up breaking its back so bad that he can't work anymore. He's not crippled, but he can't work anymore. Never ends up working again, I guess. And you know it's not going to go away, Mark.
What time did you wake up today?
Early.
Well, I mean, not today, I guess yesterday.
Early.
Is the adrenaline keeping you going?
No. I'm tired too.
I feel like that's all that I'm on right now.
So let's get to the truth. And then we can end this. Why can't you give me your version of events that night?
this instinct to want to be able to try to hold on to I don't even know what.
I can imagine you're scared. That's a perfectly natural feeling at this time. What's going through your mind right now, Mark?
Almost nothing. Anything I try to push out is like what's it like? It's like skating uphill. This tired trying to formulate thought anymore. Well, I guess my marriage is over, so I don't really have to worry about protecting her anymore.
Your daughter will be taken care of. How long have you been married, Mark?
Almost 2 years. This time.
How long were you married the first time?
4. Looks like I'll become the statistic. Didn't expect that.
Well, I think you already were a statistic when you were divorced the first time. Right?
Well, some things you just gotta do because you realize that your ultimate decision leads to what's gonna end up in your long-term happiness, and you can't just feel obligated to how other people are gonna think about it.
Don't you think that applies here too? Long-term happiness? I think it applies. Yeah, it seems like the end of the world now.
We're not that important.
I think we are.
That's gonna get really deep and philosophical, so I won't even go there.
Yeah, I'm not a big philosophical guy either. If there are other stressors going on in your life at the time, this is what you need to tell me now. Other things are going on, Mark.
Wouldn't that really be irrelevant, though?
Well,
Really?
Sure. I think it would be very irrelevant. Don't you think? Whether they be financial, at home, marriage, health. I don't know. A lot of things go on behind closed doors. Every one of us has 3 lives. We have our work life, where we behave one way at work. We have our home life, where we behave a certain way at home. And we have our secret life. And I guarantee every single person on this planet has a secret life. Things they do that maybe they don't want other people to know, that could be good or bad. They don't always have to be good, they don't always have to be bad. You calling your wife?
Mm-hmm.
You want me to leave you while you talk to her?
Sure.
Okay. I'll come back in a few minutes.
Oh, she's not there. Maybe sleeping. Okay.
Do you know the difference between the 3 types of murder? First degree, second degree manslaughter? Which category would you fall into?
What's the category for suicidal?
Why are you suicidal?
Because what's the point? I mean, if everything that I've been working for is just suddenly going to end.
Because police couldn't arrest and detain Twitchell without a charge, they were forced to let him go after the interrogation. But what they could do was get a warrant to search Twitchell's car and house, which gave them all the evidence they needed. During the search inside Twitchell's home in St. Albert, Edmonton police found a hockey mask, a steel barrel, bloodstains on the inside of Twitchell's car trunk, a stun gun, and a post-it note seemingly reminding Twitchell what to do with phrases like ship eBay items, kill room clean sweep, and a third task usually cropped out by news outlets. Tracy senseless, Tracy being Twitchell's ex-girlfriend from university. But the most damning piece of evidence found in the search was the discovery of 2 deleted files from Twitchell's laptop. The first file, named SK Confessions, short for Serial Killer Confessions, was found in the trash folder of Twitchell's laptop. It's a 42-page narrative written by Twitchell detailing his murders and their aftermath in gruesome detail. Reading the whole file would make this video way too long, so I'll do my best to summarize. The file starts off with the phrases, "This story is based on true events. The names and events were altered slightly to protect the guilty." After cross-referencing the events written in the file with real-world events, it's very easy to tell whose names were altered to what. His wife Jess was changed to Tess, his daughter Chloe was changed to Zoe, and so on. He continues, "This is the story of my progression into becoming a serial killer. Like anyone just starting out in a new skill, I had a bit of trial and error in the beginning of my misadventures. Allow me to start from the beginning, and I think you'll see what I mean." He begins by talking about how he never felt like he belonged in society, and how he quickly realized that he lacked any emotions, empathy or sympathy towards other people. He cites this as one of the reasons he decided to become a serial killer. Then he continues writing about his attempted murder and his successful murder in gruesome detail, describing how he dismembered the body as well as his unsuccessful attempts to burn the corpse. But the entire file wasn't just about himself. He decides to also talk about his dysfunctional marriage, recounting many times where his wife almost caught him cheating and how he would frequently lie about going to therapy. The second file the police found, named Profile of a Psychopath, is a 7-page breakdown of why Twitchell thinks he's a psychopath. Just like the last time, I'll try to summarize. He starts off by saying, "This is not a clinical diagnosis, an informational breakdown, or a case study as such. This is a way for me to get out on virtual paper exactly what I think I am, so I can evaluate and understand it best." He continues by outlining the characteristics of a psychopath that he doesn't have, things like preying on family members or killing animals as a kid. Then he goes on to list the characteristics he does have, like habitually lying, and explains that he and his wife are going to couples therapy, where he lies most of the time, or in his words, "My wife and the therapist ask me questions I give lip service answers to, giving them exactly what they want to hear so that they think progress is being made." In the last few paragraphs of the file, Twitchell lays out 2 options. "The dilemma I face today is pretty straightforward because I really only have 2 options. Option A, come clean on all points and prepare for inevitable divorce, or Option B, suck it up and live out the charade that is the rest of my life." This near-flawless written confession, along with traces of blood found in the trunk of Twitchell's car during a police search, led to his arrest on October 31st, 2008, and led to him inevitably being charged with first-degree murder on the same day.
Hey Mark, are we beating a dead horse here, or are you going to tell us where the body is? Simple question, Mark, can't you answer that? I think we've been pretty decent with you. You can at least give us an answer on that. Our investigation is impeccable. Our evidence is flawless. Evidence speaks for itself, as I said. The only piece of the puzzle that's missing is returning Johnny Altinger to his family. The decent thing to do.
Nearly 2 years would go by until Twitchell would finally show police where he dumped Altinger's remains. On June 3rd, 2010, Twitchell gave officers a map showing them the exact location of the body. But it would take nearly 3 years for Twitchell's high-profile murder case to finally reach a conclusion, as he was convicted and sentenced to life in prison at the Saskatchewan Penitentiary. Now this case isn't like many of the others we've covered. Although it's still a murder, it's not quite a mystery. Like many of our murderers, Mark Twitchell showed the traits of a psychopath and a true lack of empathy that allows a person to kill. But unlike the rest, Mark was very luckily caught at the very beginning of his tirade, with only 1 real kill and 1 near hilarious failure, meaning as a serial killer he was completely inexperienced and almost painfully easy to trace. What sets this case apart is also the abundance of interrogation footage available to the public, meaning we're able to watch Twitchell as he lies, jokes, and eventually cracks under the pressure of a police interrogation. We see him start off as a flamboyant and confident movie director, discussing himself and his craft for hours. But as time goes on, we watch his story unravel as he realizes that there truly is no way out of this, and eventually, we watch him face the truth of what he's done.